Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're literally opening the books on one of the most fascinating historical audits ever recorded. I'm talking about a meticulous, eye-opening account found in an ancient text, Nehemiah Chapter 9. If you love history, human psychology, and just really structured analysis, this is going to be an incredible journey. We're looking at a moment where an entire population gathered together, not just to, emotionally apologize, but to conduct a rigorous, line-by-line legal review of their own history. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. How on earth do shoes survive 40 years in a rocky, abrasive desert? It sounds completely impossible, right? But the source material details this bizarre and, frankly, miraculous provision where an entire population of Israelites wandered through harsh sand, dust, and gravel for decades. And yet, their extremely ordinary sandals never wore out and their feet didn't swell. I mean, think about the durability of a modern, expensive shoe on a hiking trail today. It wouldn't even last a few months. Yet, they were walking in this constant, undeniable reality of miraculous provision.
Part 1. Miracles in the Wilderness. Establishing God's overwhelming grace.
You see, this historical audit in Nehemiah doesn't actually start with the people's failures. It starts with a baseline of undeniable, absolute grace. 40. It is really hard to wrap your head around that number. For 40 years, day and night, this massive group of people lived in literally one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. And yet, their basic daily needs were met without fail. They were literally walking in a state of grace, just totally enveloped by miracles. The audit makes it crystal clear. The entire foundation of this relationship was God's unearned kindness.
Part 2. The Danger of Abundance. Entering the Promised Land.
But as we move into the next phase of their history, we hit the massive pivot point of the narrative. The environment for the Israelites drastically, radically changes from a barren desert to an absolute paradise. Imagine moving into a fully furnished, multi-million-dollar estate for free, with the fridge already completely stocked. It was the ultimate jackpot. When they crossed into the new land, they didn't start from scratch. The text notes they inherited fortified cities they didn't even build. They walked into houses already packed with good things. They found water in hewn cisterns they didn't have to dig, and they ate from mature vineyards, olive orchards, and fruit trees they never planted. They stepped into a massive, ready-made paradise.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is you'd think such immense, unearned wealth would create endless gratitude, right? But the text explicitly and tragically notes this. So they ate and were filled and became fat and delighted themselves in your great goodness. The word that really stands out there is fat, and it's a super jarring word in this context.
The source text helps us understand that fatness here isn't just about physical weight. It's a profound metaphor. It represents spiritual complacency and pride. It's the act of becoming so insulated by your own comfort and wealth that you entirely forget the grace that gave it to you in the first place. This abundance, it actually became a snare. It bred a really dangerous, rebellious mindset.
Part 3. The Tragic Cycle of Sin, a history of rebellion and deliverance. Because once that complacency set in, the Israelites entered this highly predictable historical loop of human behavior that would just plague them for generations. Let's move to the cycle and see how this builds. It's a tragic 5-step cycle that repeats over and over in the historical record. Step 1. They receive grace, peace, and rest. Step 2. In all that comfort, they become complacent and do evil, rebelling against the rules. Step 3. The consequences hit, and they're handed over to their enemies, leading to intense suffering. Step 4. In their pain, they finally cry out in distress. And Step 5. God mercifully sends saviors to rescue them. They get their peace back, and then, yep, you guessed it, they immediately go right back to Step 1 and start the whole shebang all over again.
If we just pause for a second and compare this ancient history to the present day, it's pretty staggering how little human nature has actually changed. Looking at ancient Israelite behavior, they forgot their dependence when their bellies were full and their cities were secure. But contrast that with today. How often do people passionately seek help or seek pod during a massive crisis, like a sudden severe illness or a totally devastating financial collapse, only to completely disappear the second they're healed? The pattern is exactly the same.
The ancient record vividly describes the sheer stubbornness of the people during this cycle. The text uses highly visual language, saying they were turning a stubborn shoulder, stiffening the neck, and acting presumptuously. When prophets and messengers were sent to warn them, to turn around, they didn't just casually ignore them. They literally turned their backs. They were stiff-necked and entirely closed off to correction, basically heading straight for a cliff.
Part 4.
A law-based confession. The legal audit of Israel. Fast forward through centuries of this awful cycle, and a surviving remnant of the people has finally returned to a ruined land. And what they do here is entirely unique. We often think of confession as this improvised, emotional thing, driven by vague feelings of guilt and highly dependent on human emotions in the moment. But what the Israelites execute here is a law-based confession. And this brilliantly illustrates how they cross-referenced their actual historical behavior against the specific, written contractual terms found in the book of Deuteronomy. It was precise, it was certain, it was a literal line-by-line admission of a breached contract. They weren't just vaguely saying, "we feel bad," they were saying clause by clause, "we broke the agreement."
And because they audited themselves against the law, they had to fully face the sheer cost of their continuous rebellion. During the time of the kings of Assyria, the northern kingdom fell. Later, under the kings of Babylon, the southern kingdom was absolutely destroyed. The curses of their broken contract ultimately, finally caught up with them. And that brings them to their present day in Nehemiah's time. They are living as slaves, literally paying tribute to foreign kings, right inside their own homeland.
This brings us to a really heartbreaking realization quoted directly from the text. Behold, we are slaves this day. In the land that you gave to our fathers to enjoy its fruit and its good gifts, behold, we are slaves. Think about the total tragedy captured in that one sentence. The very paradise they were freely given, that land of unearned abundance we looked at earlier, it has become their prison. They are completely enslaved by their own repeated choices.
Part 5, Mercy and a New Covenant, Stepping Forward. But this explainer doesn't end in despair, because despite the strict legal audit revealing their total failure, there is a resolution that finally breaks the historical loop. So, the crucial point is this realization. Nevertheless, in your great mercies you did not make an end of them or forsake them, for you are a gracious and merciful God. The analysts highlight that even under the crushing weight of this brutal, perfectly accurate legal audit, God's mercy remained the overriding factor. The contract was broken by the people, no doubt about it, but the grace of the Creator refused to completely annihilate them. Mercy had the final word.
And how did the people respond to this ultimate realization of mercy? Well, they actually took action. Because of all this, we make a firm covenant in writing. On the sealed document are the names of our princes, our Levites, and our priests. True confession, as they demonstrated, isn't just admitting you were wrong. It's taking a physical, definitive step toward a renewed relationship. They actually drafted and signed a brand new contract to definitively break that cycle of rebellion and commit to moving forward.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly relevant question. When comfort and abundance arrive in your life, do you lean into gratitude or do you drift into complacency? The historical audit of Nehemiah 9 is honestly just a mirror held up to human nature. It challenges us to examine our own response to grace, to recognize the cycles we ourselves might be stuck in, and to take definitive steps forward. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.